This started. Before we dive in, Doug, I apologize. I'm going to put you on the spot. I forgot to remind you. Doug is, like all of our TAs, graduate of the program. Doug is, out of all of the students off the top of my head, I think Doug has been the most ambitious with his JavaScript. He wrote a project to solve what is called the traveling salesman problem, which is how do you find the shortest route when there are multiple stops on the route? And he applied that in his capstone, which was finding the shortest way through a grocery store, right? Knowing where the items are. He built an entire mapping application in JavaScript to lay out where the aisles of the store were, and then built a whole algorithm to find that shortest route. So Doug is definitely in the top 3 for most ambitious capstones, especially when it's related to JavaScript. But I don't mean to intimidate you with that. I mean to show you kind of what the opportunities are. So I'm going to hand it over to Doug for a quick little intro, and then anything that you remember, Doug, about week 7, week 8 of your cohort, what you were feeling, what you were going through, any advice you have for the students, anything like that.
Wow. Yeah. All right. So I'm Doug. I'm cohort 3, as Max said. Week 7. So yeah, just finishing up, having gone through intro to HTML and CSS. I got particularly into the CSS. I love styling my HTML. And then you guys started DevOps, is that right? Okay. And so JavaScript is, it turns a corner a little bit, or I should say it sort of expands what you've been doing so far. Like now you really start to get into the interactive side of things and like making your HTML do stuff. It's really cool. I fell in love with JavaScript. It's really exciting. It's a lot of fun. And starting from day 1, if there's anything you don't get, book one-on-ones. This is where you really got to make sure you're keeping up and keeping on top of it. And that's it. My biggest thing is ask for help.
Awesome. Thank you, Doug. Doug will be around all this week. So if any questions pop up, feel free to hit him up in chat. I am going to share my screen. I noticed that when I was in Canvas today, the week 6 quiz had the wrong due date. It was set for like tomorrow night at 2 a.m. or tonight at 2 a.m. That has now been fixed, but do not panic if you go into Canvas and it says that you've got an overdue assignment. That was totally a mistake on our part. So don't forget to do the week 6 quiz. A couple questions Nathan has put together on DevOps. Shouldn't take you more than a couple minutes. Don't forget to do that just so that does not impact your grades. Try and get that done by tomorrow night's class, and then I will catch up on grading of any of those responses. With all of that said, as of 5 o'clock, I was caught up on all grading in Canvas except for the wireframes. I saved the best for last for that assignment because wireframes is where I start to give a lot of feedback on your capstone, right? It's not just, hey, I did this, I get a 5, I'm good to go, I move on to the next assignment. You'll notice I start using Canvas now to start putting in a lot more comments and feedback on the assignments you're turning in. That is especially true for that JavaScript, that in-class project assignment we did for JavaScript, right? So now you're not going to just get a grade, you're going to get some feedback as to why you got that grade, unless you got 100%. And at that point, I probably didn't leave any notes. I believe you should get an email notification when I leave a comment on an assignment. If you don't, you will definitely get a notification somewhere in Canvas so you can go back through, review that feedback. And as with all of our assignments, whether it's a quiz or a homework, you are always welcome to go back through and resubmit that assignment, and I will gladly boost your grade there. No points taken away for resubmissions or lates or anything like that. Feel free to check out your grade. Most importantly is this 80% threshold. So once your grade drops below 80%, that's when we start flagging you for what we call academic warning, right? Academic warning is not meant to scare you. It is meant to say, hey, here are some additional resources. Let's come up with a action plan, make sure that you're getting one-on-one support, make sure you know where to focus. It is meant to say, hey, when you're falling behind, sometimes you don't even know you're falling behind, or you feel like you're so behind, you don't know how to catch up, right? And that's what our academic warning is meant to do, is to say, hey, let's prioritize what assignments you have owed. Let's figure out what the best way is to get you on track, and we'll get your grade back above that 80% threshold. That 80% is also tied to your stipend. So if you are below that 80%, that is where we start worrying about stipends, about not being able to issue you the stipend for that month. However, we often do a double stipend issuing if you get your grade back above 80%. Instead of getting $100, you get the $200 because you didn't get it for the month before. So we try to work with you as much as possible there. Jen, I'm not having any Zoom issues, so it might be your internet, but any other students, feel free to chime in if anyone else is having Zoom problems. Go ahead, check your grades. Do not panic if it's below 80%. Just go back in, look at what assignments you have due, try and get them either resubmitted or submitted in the first place. And if you need any help or have any questions about your grade, feel free to hit me up in Slack or schedule a one-on-one, and we can go from there. Jen, maybe try a full computer reboot and see if that gets something shaken loose. Okay, any questions about grading or quizzes or anything from DevOps from last week that you may have questions about, that you wanted to ask Nathan and you forgot, that you wanted to ask my opinion of, to see how it's different from Nathan? How are we feeling about DevOps in general? Feeling like that was a refreshing break from the hard challenges of JavaScript? Good, we like confidence.
It was fun.
Good. DevOps is, especially that week, it's kind of exciting to see your code go live, right? Being able to see your first domain name and actually being able to purchase that, being able to get the DNS all linked up so that you can actually send friends and family to the website. DevOps is definitely can be a very fun thing to work in order to see, hey, all of this stuff that we've been learning is actually coming true, is actually going live, is actually being publishable and deployable and visitable on the public internet. Okay, it is time for our first Capstone check-in. I have taken everyone's names and put them in a randomizer because I think being sentenced to the beginning of the alphabet and the end of the alphabet is not fair to anyone. So I have randomized everyone's names. I will call on you guys one by one. Again, the goal of this capstone is to say, hey, I've got not only some wireframes done, but I've started coding out my pages, right? We don't need a full page complete. We don't need to see the entire application forming. All we want to see here is, hey, do you have some momentum going, that you've got some code that you can show in the browser? The hardest part about starting any project, and this goes to this day with a decade of professional experience, the thing that I hate doing the most, starting a new project from scratch. because once you get that project going, then you can add to your code, you can get multiple pages up, you can get links going on. But for this check-in, what we want to see is, hey, do you have some wireframes thought through? And two, have you gotten a jump start on at least 2 different pages in your web browser? Have you gotten your index.html created and maybe some other page that index is linking to? That could be as simple as a logon page with a home page. That could be something as complicated as, hey, I've got the whole app laid out and now I'm ready to start making it work and be interactive. We don't need you to that point quite yet, but this is a chance to see kind of not only how far you have come along, but how your fellow students are progressing, right? Sometimes it's a little nerve-wracking to think that you're behind, and then you see where all of your other fellow students are, and you realize, oh, maybe I'm not as behind as I think I am, right? So this is a slow process because we need to get through 19 of you guys, which is not easy to do in any circumstances. However, we have found these capstone check-ins to be really important as a confidence booster, as an anxiety buster, and as a way to kind of see what your other capstone ideas are. So I'm going to go down the list. Go ahead and share your screen when you are called. Give us a brief overview of what your project idea is. Then dive over into your code and show us in your browser, where are you at? What do you have built? And then thinking down the road, what do you want to be working on next? Anyone have questions for capstones before we kick it off and start calling people? Okay. We are in week 7. It is time to call me out on my bullshit. If I am not pronouncing your name correctly, I want you to virtually slap me and pronounce your name for me correctly. Gonna try my best. There was already one name that I looked up in Slack and feel really guilty that I've not been pronouncing right, or I don't think I've been pronouncing right. So if I pronounce your name wrong, or you have a nickname that I am not calling you and should be, now is your time to correct me right after I call on you. All of that said, we are going to kick it off with Monte. Is Monte here? Nope. Okay. Then we are going to go to Danny. You are up.
Oh, I'm so excited that I'm first, but here we go. I will share my screen.
I promise it was fully random.
Sure, Max, sure. All right, for my capstone, I am actually doing tarot cards and being able to pull different ones for each person. So I've started my code. As you can see, these are at the top. This is still my CSS all down here. Oh, this is another thing. Look, there we go. Everything's all messed up. Okay, so there's my CSS that I've started.
Nice. Can we see what it looks like in the browser?
Yes, just don't, how do I change my screen from the one I'm sharing? Actually, I'll just switch it over there.
Yeah, pulling it over is usually the easier way. Perfect.
Yep. All right, so we can go to home.
Like in your hover effect there. It's a nice touch.
And then I can go to decks. I have to choose different pictures. I haven't decided my background picture yet because it's too blown up from what I had chosen. And then this plain boring links page.
Okay.
And then my profile page.
Nice. For your inputs there, are those actually clickable?
Yep.
Like, can you for the profiles page, can you click into like the email field? Nice. All right, so I'm loving the styling, loving that you have multiple pages done. I love seeing that you're thinking through navigation, because that's often a tough part for a project, right? About thinking like, hey, I've got all these different features that I want. How do I switch between them? So
Yeah.
we've got a lot to learn in terms of like the database and how to store things and all of that. But this is not only a great first example of where you should be, but this is even maybe a step just beyond where you should be in terms of you've got not only the basic components showing up on the stage, but on the screen, but you've started really tweaking it the way you want and being like, oh, I want a bigger input with a little bit more padding in it, or oh, I want my buttons to not have rounded corners on them, or whatever it is. So it's okay to source different code from the internet and get it working in your own project, as long as you understand it, right? As long as you can read through that code, even if someone else wrote it and explain it to someone else, then you are good to go. So this is a perfect example. Great first capstone check-in here. What are you working on next?
I'm trying to figure out like different backgrounds, and I'm gonna start taking pictures of tarot cards that I want to be able to be randomized and to be able to be pulled for people, and getting
Awesome.
information for those.
Do you have your wireframes done for what the interface will look like for like randomizing?
Not yet, because I didn't know how to like really show how to do that. So I was gonna try to get a one-on-one with you, because I'm like, I don't know how I would show that on a, because I just drew mine out on paper.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, no, and that's a great thing to think through next, right? It's very easy to say this is the feature that I want. It's much harder to be like, well, what makes sense for the user to be able to click on this and have the process start, right? So
Right,
great,
yeah.
great use of a one-on-one. Totally fine. And I think that is like the perfect next step, because you're going to need some JavaScript to take care of the actual randomizing and showing of the information and all of that. So awesome
Yeah.
job here. Keep up the great work.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Max.
No problem. Sorry for the awkward pauses tonight. I am taking detailed notes, and all of these notes will be in Canvas as well. So you'll be able to see your grade on your capstone check-in, and then also any notes that I have left for you, just like all the other assignments. It's a 1 to 5 scale. And if you see that in Canvas, do not panic. There's nothing you need to turn in for it. It's just an easy way for me to get feedback, not only to you guys, but then also in the grade book. So Quota, I have you up next.
I just knew it. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, so here is my code. I have my logo picture up and my CSS. So I am doing my website, but I did want to include a portion like a therapy corner where people can click on the link and like have access to local therapists.
Okay.
So far all I have is like my logo and then just the nav bar.
Okay. So off to a good start. I like seeing that you've got icons working, right? Because that's a step beyond just the basic HTML. That's leveling up. That's making sure you understand your link tags. Like seeing the CSS that you've got going. We want to be just maybe one little micro step further than where we're at now in terms of having another HTML page, maybe looking at your nav bar and having multiple links for that created. but you're over the toughest part, right? Which is just getting the project started and getting some content showing up in the page. Because from here, it becomes much easier to go, oh, well, I'm on my homepage. What do I want on my homepage? Or, oh, if I click on about, I probably want a little picture of me, or, you know, a little paragraph about the business or something like that. So I think you're on the right track here. Next steps would be creating those additional pages and then narrowing in and saying, hey, which pages are going to be really most helpful for me in terms of being able to practice my concepts, right? So what page might have the most functionality in it? Maybe it's finding that counselor, and I'm going to need, you know, the ability to click on the type of counselor and see different mental health counselors and fields they specialize in. Maybe that's not part of your idea, right? But thinking through kind of where is that user interactivity going to be beyond clicking on the links, I think will be a really important next step for you. Good work here. Couple more pages to get linked up, and then you'll be completely caught up and on par.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Next up, I have Jen.
Kind of shooting myself.
We can hear you.
Yeah, I know. I had to, it made me download a package for Zoom or something. It was really weird.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. So my idea is to, and I know I'm shooting myself in the foot, never gonna get this finished, but I want to do like something that connects the database of missing people to some kind of facial recognition and have that cross-reference photos from social media.
Okay.
I don't have much. I literally just have this started, and the sign-in button doesn't do anything but bring it back.
Okay.
But it's mostly going to be back end. It's not going to be a lot of user friendly stuff. It's going to be, all the work's going to be done in the back part of it. I want something like when they sign in, I want it to be something like they have to have some kind of credentials like police force or FBI or something like that in order to use this.
Okay.
And you know, it's going to check to see if the credentials are up to date, not expired, and all that good stuff. Yeah, that's about it.
So I would say for next steps, you want to kind of think through that process, right? So you're gonna, when they hit that sign in button or when they go to the register screen, think through like, hey, I'm gonna ask for the license ID number and then the agency that you may be credentialed with and maybe one other piece of information.
Yeah.
And then from there, okay, when they hit next, what happens? I want to be able to upload an image and have it scan through a database of images. Okay, well, that's complex on the back end, but we want to think through on the front end, well, how do they upload that image, right? That's going to be an input type file.
I have like the whole the wireframe done. It's not going to be able to, like, people aren't going to be able to upload images to it. I know there's got to be some kind of database of photos and stuff like that of missing people. I just want it to be able to access that. And if it can't access that, like even have its own like copy of it.
Yep. So those are all things that you can look into, but are going to impact your user interface, right? So digging into that now to figure out, like, I can tell you right now, Facebook doesn't let you just hit a download button and download every image that people have uploaded, right? So I think that you'll want to kind of narrow your scope down there and say, hey, what's Facebook going to give me access to? What is, or any of the social media sites, and what is what's the missing persons database going to give me access to, and then what can I get as my MVP there, right? So I think that all of that information is going to impact what that user interface looks like for you. And there's going to need to be some interface around, well, what happens when there is a match, right? Like, does that flag the detective that got assigned to the case? Is
Yeah.
there some interface that they can go in and manage that? Is there a way to say, hey, this is this isn't actually the person we're looking for. This isn't a match. Those are all things that you'll want to kind of think through. But at the core of it, you've got 2 different photo databases that you're going to need to look into and figure out what you can get access to before going too far down the project idea rabbit hole. Pun kind of intended.
Mhm.
Good work. Still want to see kind of just one more page there, but I think because you've got such an ambitious project idea, you're going to want to make sure that you have access to not just one, but both data sets before progressing too far down that idea.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And ambitious is not a bad word. I don't want you to hear ambitious and think, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to do that.
Oh no, I know I'm shooting myself in the foot with this.
I think you've got, there are always ways to kind of scope down that idea and say, oh, well, if I can get access to one database and not the other, how would I go about that? And sometimes you just need a prototype, right? Sometimes you say, hey, I've got 1,000 pictures that I've uploaded into a database. And now I make an API call to the missing persons database and just cross-reference the 1,000 pictures I have to see if that works. Great Capstone idea, totally doable to do that. And then you don't run into quite as many issues with it. The other thing that I'll throw out there is that we don't go over scraping in class, but scraping is the idea of, hey, I may not have access to their database or to their API, but they have that information on a public website. So if I can go through the website and basically build a bot to pull all of that information off their website, I could use that as my database. So that is another idea to just plant in the back of your head if you're researching the data and realizing that, hey, this data is out there, but I can't necessarily use it directly. That is something that we can look into together during a one-on-one.
Yeah, so I didn't know if there was a whole bunch of like access troubles to get into there too.
Could I ask a question?
Shoot.
How available is facial recognition? Like, is that,
Very.
so that's not at all difficult to use? Okay, because
No.
I was thinking of something different, but kind of related for another project, and I was,
facial recognition on live video streams is kind of newer cutting edge technology. So the ability to have a web camera in an airport and the camera to be able to pick someone out of there, that is a little bit challenging for technology right now. But if you're working with 2 still photos, that's something that a lot of open JavaScript frameworks can help you with.
okay, cool. Thank you.
Rain, are you with us? Okay. Oh, there you are. We can't hear you even though you are off mute. Give you one more second because we still can't hear you, and if not, I'll come back to you at the end. Okay, I'm gonna come back to you at the end. Palash.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, let me share my screen. Right. So my capstone idea is a movie review based dating app. For example, you go into this website, you sign up, you create a profile, and then 10, say, most popular suspense thriller movies are given to you, and you rate them out of 10. Similarly, another person follows these same steps, and if they review the same movies, give the same movies the same ratings, you two get matched, and now you can be friends, go out on a dinner or whatever. All right. So let me show you the home page. So I went in and created this logo. I know the name and the logo might look a little corny. Here is an image, a little copy. I copied from ChatGPT. Here are some FAQs. These are called accordions. You can copy them from getbootstrap.com if you want. Use them for FAQs. So you go in, you register, you fill up all your profile, your name, email, gender, what are you looking for? Upload 3 photos, say. So this is as far as I could take it, but the next steps are, the third page would be like pick your kind of movies. You select a genre. For example, you select all rom-coms, comedy movies. The page is going to populate with the top 3 most popular movies, probably of all time or the most recent. I'm still working on that. And once then you go in and add your ratings to all 10 of them or some of them. Then the website's going to take you to this new page where your matches are going to appear. The matches, these tiles are going to have a small picture of your match, their name, what movie they loved really, and you can send a spark. I'm just calling it a spark so far. Next steps would be building the functionality of how it's going to work in the backend, like what should be the range of reviews, how am I going to collect the data from one person and push it on to another. Is location going to play a good part? And I had a one-on-one with the Max, and he brought this great point, like if love reviews, love a movie gets matched, does hate a movie also get matched? And also, what about the average ones, somewhere in between? Because we are looking for strong topics for people to talk about. So we'll rating a movie average will like meh, will it work or not? So those are my second steps, upcoming steps. And so far, this is my capstone idea.
Love it. Great progress. And this is a great example of everyone works on their capstone a little differently, right? So Palash, you've got 2 pages that are like completely done. They're styled, they're beautiful. You're ready to move on to the next one, right? Some people go, you know what? I'm not going to do every page and go one by one. I want to get all my pages created first. And then I want to get my nav bar working on all my pages. And then I'm going to go through and do each individual component, right? And that's also okay. That progress is a little, it feels a little different. If you go page by page, you feel like you're accomplishing it as you go, but you've got so much work to keep on going on, right? Compared to the other method, which is, oh, I've got my nav bar done on all my pages. And if you go and you apply that methodology, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm done my whole site. I've got everything made, right? Either approach is totally fine. Everyone works a little differently. So love seeing the not only how much you have done in the HTML, but how you've got that very clear focus, right? Of seeing the wireframes and being like, all right, I know exactly how I'm going to build this out into my HTML and get those next steps going. So we do those wireframes not only to take up a bunch of your time, but also so you can use them to say, hey, I'm going to translate this right into my code, and that's how I'm going to go from there. Awesome work. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
I'm going to start shouting for everyone at Common Space because apparently there is a fire alarm or fire drill. I'm going to ask you guys to just drop out of the meeting if you are at Common Space, so I don't accidentally call on you in the middle of a fire alarm. This is going to make things interesting. Let's see how many people are at Common Space. Next up, I have Amber Lynn. There you are.
Gotta unmute myself, and I'm sorry about my dog barking.
All good.
Here's my project. My first page broke last night, so I'm trying to fix that. I'm doing a floral forecast where you can go in and first I'll say on the first page, I wanted to have a couple articles here talking about how it might be important to bring flower farming back to America, because
Okay.
a lot of it is left and many of the flowers are imported, like 80%. So you can come in here, and if you want to create your own growing calendar, you can come in and pick your last frost date and choose a date. It doesn't work yet. But you choose a season of flowers that you want them to work during, or to harvest during fall. They work in sun and shade and height. And then they should eventually pop up over here. And then you can go through, pick which seeds you have and you want to start, and you can choose which ones, and then go, this is in the way, sorry. And then you can go submit, and it doesn't work yet. So the goal is to have that information pop up on a calendar to tell you when to start the seeds indoors, and then when to transfer them outdoors, when to harvest them. And also, like flower farmers or gardeners like to go to find farmers markets to sell. So I was going to have a page for that as well.
Love it.
And so you put in like a local address or closest city and pop that in the closest. I was wondering if I should put closest city or county here.
You
This
can
one
do
next
it
door.
by address. There's a really cool API called Google Address Autocomplete, where you can start typing in your address, and you've probably seen that on other websites. Like, it will autocomplete your address, and then when you click on that, it will filter down all of your results based off of whatever address that you entered.
Okay.
And that will also work with like zip codes, or if they just type in Syracuse, New York. So love that. I would say for your next steps, don't let that like little functionality hold you back between your create the growing calendar screen and the checking off of things, right? So start thinking through, and you may have already done this in your wireframes. What does that screen look like? Even though it's not fully functional, even though we can't actually like take whatever they checked off, I would say start building out that page as well, because that's going to be somewhat involved to get that calendar. Oh yeah, this is great.
To pop up here and then have the information of each flower and how to harvest it, and because sometimes you have to plant it a certain way, whether it's like
We're
on top of
losing
the
your
soil or like
oh,
you probably
sorry,
know.
we were losing you a
But
little bit
some
there.
people don't. I girl back after you. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
All right,
And
you're
then I
you're back.
also
I
wanted
think
to
we
have
can hear
a
you now.
floral glossary to bring up. Okay. I also wanted to do like a floral glossary as well eventually, but
Awesome. So I would say just keep it up, because what you got going already for both this screen and the growing calendar, the first growing calendar screen, you're like on the right track. You've got all of your styling in, you've got, you're already thinking through the tough parts, which is like, hey, I've got all of this data. How do I really want to display it? And sometimes the table's the right answer. Sometimes, having that calendar on the left side and then all of the text over on the right is going to be better. So I would say keep keep it up because you're already doing the tough parts. Don't let the functionality slow you down, right? So make it so that when you click on that submit button, regardless of what you have inputted, it takes you to that next screen, and start thinking through, okay, how do I make that calendar show up? How do I have some information show up? Yes, I want it so that when I click on a different date, the text on the right changes. I don't need to worry about that, but just getting some text there or having a picture of the flower or something like that, using that dummy data that you've already started with is going to be good next steps. But you are a step ahead of where you need to be here. Not only do you have multiple pages created, you're already thinking through that functionality, getting the calendar picker showing up, making your inputs work, having the data in a table, like all really good steps. You're a step ahead of the curve here. Keep that momentum going on all your other pages and you're going to do totally fine.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome work. Up next, I have Goggin.
Hey, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. All right, I'm gonna start my video right now. All right, let me just set up my display real quick. What the hell is my, yeah. Okay. I share screen.
Perfect.
Can you guys see that?
Yes.
All right, so my idea was to create a website for local church here. So because they don't have anywhere to communicate with the community or anything. So this is the Figma wireframe that I did and mockup. So it's gonna be like the starter page, describe what is all this about. And then there's gonna be a calendar that they can put events in there, if there's somebody bringing something, or it's gonna be a wedding day or something like that, that they can put there. And I think I also want to add here is gonna be that if you want to bring in something, choose a date on there, and you can just bring in there. And I kind of want to do that, or I just want to do like a view only that you can. And I also want to put like a little bit of history about what is this place about and what they teach there. And I want to put individual links to all these, like all these 10 gurus that we have, and about their history. And it's gonna be get in touch. This is gonna be a map, so I'm gonna put a map API here, and this is just like what can you do with this form right here. So far, I did this here. So a carousel pictures of the church here. Inside, outside, I'm gonna put everything here, and I just got this done so far.
Cool. So off to a really good start. Love everything that I'm seeing in the mockups. We want to take it a step further in what you've got done in the code, right? So over the hardest part of just getting the sites up and running and some code started, but want to just see a little bit more of your mockups there. The other thing I would say is think through that calendar feature a little bit more, right? Because you're not going to find something that's kind of like out of the box that just does everything that you want. So start thinking through of what does the form look like if I have an event that I want to add to the calendar, right? What happens when that form gets submitted? Is that generating an email? And then what does that calendar look like? Is that the view only one that someone is manually updating? Is that an interface that I can just use, or do I have to build that from scratch? So those are all things that you want to start looking into. You don't have to make any decisions now. It doesn't have to be fully functional now, but just thinking through those little aspects of, well, I need someone to be able to fill out a form that sends off an email that says, hey, can you add this event to the calendar for me? So start thinking through those aspects of it. But I think you're off to a really good start. Just want a little bit more code And then you'll be fully caught up and ready to keep going.
So I had a for the calendar, I still have to, I mean, I can just make whatever I want and at this point, but I want to give it to them. But the thing is that I don't think I want to put anybody can add anything, because I want the committee to decide what they can do
Yep.
at that day. So it's gonna be kind of view only for now. But also I also have I want to do different thing also with it, but that's gonna be a different app.
Okay.
I want to do it's gonna be to-do list, but it's not gonna be a normal to-do list. It's gonna be, so if you put groceries in there, and every time you go to Walmart, it will send you a email that, oh, you are Walmart, to make sure you remember to grab these because you have that location. Because a lot of time people go there and they don't check their thing or anything, but it will track their location and will like, oh, you're at Walmart, just make sure you grab these and bring them with you, or if there's anything on there, and we'll send you a location that.
Gotcha.
1 second, Money, 1 second, please. Go outside. Go outside 1 second.
So great work on this. Just want to see a little bit more on the HTML side, and then you'll be completely caught up for this check-in.
Okay, so I don't know which one you think is the better. I mean, I'm gonna do this anyways, but I'm gonna do the other one on the
I
side.
would focus on this only because the GPS one is going to require like mobile GPS data access. And that geolocation can be tough to do in the web browser, especially in the background. So the phone kind of limits you there in terms of what permissions you have and how often you can get the location. So I would say focus in on this one. And then also think about like, okay, what happens when that contact form gets submitted? Is there an email that gets sent? Or is there some dashboard where you can go in and see all the different contact forms that have been submitted and, you know, see that in the database? So I would think beyond just the homepage and start thinking about, well, what happens when someone interacts with this, right? Is there a way that when they click on a calendar event, it takes them to an event details page that may be a different page? Or what happens when they click on that history of someone? Does that person have their own page or maybe a modal that pops up that gives you more details about that person? So think beyond just that initial design and think into that user interactivity of what happens when they actually click on this, or where does it go from there?
So this is gonna be stored in the database, everything, or is gonna be like just through an API? I don't know that yet. Like, you know, like if somebody fills the form out, let's say I said Saturday, I wanna go, I can bring in something, or I can have an event on Saturday, and then they will receive an email just from here.
Okay.
Or
But you still need to think through, hey, it needs to say, thanks, your form has been submitted. Or, you know, when they click on that person in your section above it, what happens then? What does that page look like?
okay.
So that's what you want to think through, right? Is because you're going to get your first page done and everything coded out and then go, okay, well, now what? You know, if there are people stored in the database that have a couple paragraphs about them, how do I get those couple paragraphs to show up? What does that page look like? So that's what you'll want to start thinking through.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, good work.
Thank you.
Okay. Up next, I have Shannon. You are with us. Perfect timing. Shannon, you are up. Hopefully, Common Space is not on fire. Hopefully, it was just a drill.
She's working on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm getting there. I'm really trying. Okay. I'm sorry.
Do you want a minute? I can come back to you.
Actually, if you could, that would be great. That would be great. Thank you.
Is it Lashai, not Lachey?
No, it is Shay.
It is Shay. Okay.
Yeah.
I was checking your Slack profile and felt really guilty, and now I feel less guilty. Lachey,
Alright.
go ahead.
All right, give me a second. Can you see it?
Yes, you are good.
All right. So this is the code that I got so far. I don't have a concrete capstone idea yet. I'm stuck between like two. And
Okay.
as an indecisive person, that's probably the hardest part of the whole capstone project, honestly. Just making a decision. But
Sure.
this is what I got so far. Really nothing big. What I wanted to do, since I couldn't come to a concrete idea, I decided to just focus on the interface, how it would look instead. So that's it. I'm just go ahead and go to the browser. Oh, I can't even see. Okay, can you see that?
No, I think you just shared your VS Code in
Okay.
Zoom. So you
Alright.
probably have to stop the share and then restart it.
Okay. All right.
There you go. That's working now.
All right. So this is what I had. Again, this was all just to work on the layout on how things. So as you see, just the example placeholder stuff like right here. I just wanted to see how everything will look as far as my code, just to test it out. So what I wanted to focus on was, besides the layout, was the functionality of things. So as you can see, these tabs work, and as you can see, it also comes up with a header. So whatever you clicked on, it would show up right here. So you don't have to scroll up all the way. But what
Nice.
I wanted to do was have them also link to a different page, which I spent hours doing. I couldn't figure out. So my next move is to have these as separate things. So it just shows you the information on whatever page you're on, and just have like the navigation, just have its own little bar so it could just link to the other pages and whatnot. So it'd be
Perfect.
like home, like the main page or whatever topic you want. Then you have a tab which shows like additional information on what you're looking for. Tab 2 again, etc. And this disable here because I was just testing out like different tags or whatnot just to see what worked. But the placeholder name is basically going to be the site or whatever I come to a name is going to be placed right here. The direction there. So if you want to look up something, you know, you can always type it in. That'll work out there. And if you hit search, it comes up green. And as you can see, it just the whole page refreshed. So that's basically what I'm working on right now, and trying to see if I can maybe somehow get like a notification alert to pop up, like if you bookmark something. Again, when I come to the idea, I'll work on that more, but it was just, again, just a test on how I want the layout and user interface to be.
So love seeing you playing around with different components, right? Pulling in different pieces. The good news is tonight we are going to start diving into how you would use JavaScript to make those pages swap out, right?
Because I was using a bit of JavaScript, so I was messing around with that. That's why I only got the layout. So, but
so
yeah.
We'll dive into that tonight. We're going to do a little to-do list app where you can type something in, hit the add button, and have it show up on the page. That's obviously not exactly for switching out page content, but the more and more we go in the JavaScript, the more that will be applicable to this in particular. I would say that your top priority shouldn't be code because you're already couple steps ahead of where you need to be there. It should be narrowing in on that capstone, right? Because the whole point of the capstone is having that passionate idea that you're like, all right, this is what I'm going after. So if you want to schedule a one-on-one with me, or if there aren't any times, just shoot me a Slack message. We can just talk through what your ideas are. I can kind of vibe off where you're at, give you a couple other ideas, and help you narrow in on that. Because it's really easy to kind of just throw code at the wall and see what sticks. But we want to get you locked in on your project idea to make sure that everything that you're doing is really applying to like a real world problem or thing that you're working on. So grab a one-on-one with me, or if you want to just jot down ideas in a Slack message and shoot them over to me, I can get you some feedback on that, and then we can go from there.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Good work. All right. Next up, Shannon, are you ready? Before I forget you?
I am ready.
Go for it.
Okay. So, can you see it? Yes, no?
Mm-mm.
No?
Try again. Oh, now we can.
Yes, okay. All right, so yeah, there's like all my code and everything on my different pages. And this is the page. So mine, what it is I studied human design for several years. And I would always get frustrated when I was looking for information online. So that's what I'm creating, is something that I know works for me. So this is my home page. I have the different types, and these are all different aspects of human design. So I need to go through and put in more information. As far as defining everything and laying that out in a little different way, I have some images I want to add, one in particular to this page. And I'm waiting to style everything until I'm done, or at least until I want to decide to stop and style some of it. But yeah, I do want to add more of the social media logos. And I want to add a page that's resources where people can find different sites that they want to use, or the ones that I'm familiar with, and then do a contact page as well. So if people want more information about this, they can message me or whatever. I think that's all.
Awesome. So I'm going to push you. You got a lot of great things set up for this capstone check-in. Like, you're good to go. You got multiple pages going. You've got a beautiful nav bar that's laid out wonderfully. I don't know how you managed to do that.
I have no clue.
Totally joking. Use your one-on-ones, people. That is what we are here for. When you are working on your capstone and you feel like you're about to make your forehead bloody from beating it against your keyboard, that is what our one-on-ones are here for you. But you've got everything checked off for this capstone check-in. I'm going to push you to think about what's the interactive part of the site. Is it that I want people to be able to leave comments? Is it that I want people to be able to build out their own profile or see how profile combinations interact with each other? I'm just making stuff up here, right? Like, you are the expert in this field. So think about, like, what makes this an app and not just a website, right? Because what you've got so far is a great website. And a website is that one-way communication, right? I go on these different pages, I get what I need, I leave. But what makes that the web? That could be comments, that could be the ability to upload profiles, or create an account and have pictures. That could be something, I don't know. I'm going to leave that for you to ponder on and think about and say, okay, I've got a great framework for the information for getting started. How do I want to make this a little bit more interactive? And it doesn't have to be anything huge, but thinking about how do we pull the database into this a little bit more? How do we make users be able to interact with it or build something with it? How do we make it so users can share information with me, and then I can turn around and build a custom page for them or something like that? That's what I want you to think about. It could be something as simple as, hey, I'm going to add different components that I have across the different pages, and then I have a summary page that's summarizing all the different information across the different pages. That could be a good way to make it interactive. Just something to think about.
Okay. I actually thought of, like, as you're talking, I thought about doing something where people can connect. I don't know if it's like if it would look like a blog or whatever, because everybody's got their own individual design. So it would be really good to have people interact, because I know that's another thing. It's hard to find a place for the information and to also interact at the same time. So
absolutely. And that's a great way of doing it. Someone could create an account, and then you could click on the person, see what information they inputted, and then maybe send a message to them, right? And now you've got about 9 different things that you need to wireframe out and think through, but that's what's going to make your website more of a web app So think about what's important to you, what's going to be most helpful, not only to you and your users, but then also for you getting practice and thinking about, oh, saving that information in the database and being able to message people or whatever it is. That's where I want you thinking, because checked off this Capstone check-in. Next Capstone check-in, that's what I want to see a little bit more of what makes it interactive.
Okay,
Awesome work.
thank you.
Next up, I have Asthma. And don't forget to unmute.
Can you guys hear me fine?
Yes.
All right, so my idea, I had a lot of ideas to begin with, so it was all over the place, to be honest with you. And then I finally settled on a very tangible idea, a pain point that I currently have in my life. As some of you guys know, I help my husband with his local taxi cab / shuttle service business. And we're always having an issue with people scheduling rides. They're calling at odd times of the night, and we have to like get up and take down information, do quotes and all of that. It's just a lot of headache. So I decided to create a website / app for Uconnect Transportation. That's the name of the company. I did a lot more wireframe than coding, granted, but this is how the idea that I have for the website to look. So we have the logo at the top here, the name of the company, a little bit about the company, the phone number and the services. Looks a little pretty. And then I want it to have a book trip button at the bottom left, and at the bottom right, I want to get quote button for the first page. And we go to the second page. This is where the user enters the trip details. So we have the name, phone, email, passenger count, pickup date, pickup time, pickup location. All these are very important stuff that I definitely struggle with. So it would make my job a lot easier. And the type of vehicles they want, if they either want a shuttle van or a taxi cab, they just click the drop-down menu, any additional notes, book trip or get quote. That's all I have. And for the other screen 3, I wanted to start using a little bit JavaScript. So I kind of wanted map of the inputted addresses and the destination addresses. I also wanted to incorporate GPS, but I know that's like really, really difficult to do. But there's still a lot of stuff that I could do with this project. So it gives me a little wiggle room to work on other things. For screen 4, I kind of want something communication-wise between the driver and the passenger. So working on that. But for now, this is what I have. Any
Awesome.
suggestions are welcome.
Love that you're kind of thinking through all the details, right? Because it's really easy to say, hey, page 2 is gonna just be about trip details, and then you get into the mock-ups and you're like, oh my God, I need like 10 different pieces of information, right? And it kind of forces you to think through it. So I think you're on the right track here. Next step is we would definitely want to get you in that code, right? And you may be someone who thinks through the project all through mockups and gets all 4 pages done first, and then dives into the code and does every page of the code. Or you may say, hey, let me hold up and not do the rest of the mockups. Let me try creating this in the HTML. And while I'm doing it in the HTML, I might have some ideas that will impact the other 2 screens that I haven't mocked up yet. So I would say you've got a lot of functionality in there. Make sure that you're diving into the code just so that you've got that because otherwise what you get into is you're like, I've got so much that I need to code out here, right? And it becomes overwhelming, and you have this vision and you have it in the mockups and you know exactly what you want, and then you're like, but I have so much code to write. So be careful you don't fall into that trap, because for your Capstone, requesting a pickup and having that pickup save in the database, that is enough for your entire Capstone requirements. Obviously, you want to do a lot more. And once we get that trip working, we can definitely look at those other pages, but make sure you don't have that MVP run away, right? And all of a sudden, because it's not minimum, it's not viable for you to make the product. And so definitely make sure you're diving into your code there. But I love seeing how clear of a vision that you have in the mockups and how easy it is as a user to say, hey, I could totally see how I want to build this or how I would want to use this website. So take that energy, dump it into your code, and I think you will do great and be able to not only get that initial 2 screens working, but to be able to progress from there.
Definitely. The reason why I did not create other pages on my wireframe is I don't want to get too overwhelmed. I want to start coding the first 2 pages, see if I run into any issues, see if there's like something I want to add on to that before going anywhere else. But for now, I'm locked into these 2 pages for sure.
Awesome. Very good work. Can't wait to see the HTML there. And really a good example of everyone's capstone is a really different idea, right? And everyone's going to be spending time in different places, and that's totally okay. So keep up the good work. Love seeing the process. Allie, I have you up next. Yes.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I was in the middle of eating this granola bar.
Sorry, we're getting down towards the bottom of the list. So if you haven't been called on yet, you know who's coming up.
Okay, so let me turn. I'm not really sure where to start first. Okay, I guess I'll explain it first.
Mockups or your browser are a good way to kind of see where you're at as you're explaining it, but an explanation is fine too.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm gonna pull it up. I just wanted to give like a basic.
Sure, go for it.
Oh, I mean, I guess I could pull it up anyway. Let me see. And then okay, I think you guys could still hear me too.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, so I got some VS Code over here. Let me move some of this stuff down. Okay, so I have a couple different pages. So what I'm doing here is, okay, so the other day when we was going through the DevOps stuff, I had got the domain name Coding Qs. So, you know, I don't know, I'm trying to I'm doing something with the name, doing something for the city, but I noticed that when you go online, like there's not a main hub for like all the tech resources in Syracuse. Everything is kind of like scattered. Like they have a Hack Upstate website, they have the Syracuse Surge website, you know, there's a couple different like places. So what I wanted to do was just build a website that's basically people can go on there and just learn about like coding resources in the Syracuse community. And then let me pull this up. So I don't really have any CSS done right now. And actually, I'm kind of ashamed to say this, but I literally just coded all of this stuff while we were here because I was thinking about it and it took me a while to get my concept because I'm really bad at like my creative side. I don't know. I've been in a creative funk for like a couple of years now. So I have that going on. So I'm like, I don't know what to do. So this morning I went to breakfast and I'm with my cousin and she was like, well, you got this cool idea. Maybe here's how you could turn it into like, you know, a web page. You can use the name as well and have it be for the city. So I'm like, you know what? You're right. So I have this website and it kind of looks like a lot, but the concept is simple. So I have a homepage. And then on the homepage, I'll have like an about section, which you can't really see, but that's its own row right there. I just haven't added into CSS to separate it. And then I wanted to have like a section where there would be resources for like certain code and stuff. So like if people wanted to learn code, I have that on there. And then maybe, you know, a couple other resources like YouTube videos or, you know, maybe a boot camp up there or something. And then about the developer. So this is all on my main page. And then about the developer, which is me, and then a little contact form just in case people want to get in contact with me. My next page is going to be my resources page. And it looks like this because I kind of wanted to get a feel for how I wanted to set the resources up. So I use those card elements that were on Bootstrap. And I have some of them in here just to show like I want a little image, and then I'm gonna give a little info on the resource. People will be able to click that and it'll take them right to another page that's linked to like the whole resource and stuff. So I plan on adding a little bit more here. Like I kind of want to do it categorically. So I'm thinking maybe have like free coding boot camps in one little section, maybe YouTube videos in one, and then like maybe paid or, you know, textbooks or something like that. Then I also wanted to have, it's going to be like, this is a big step for me, but I wanted to add a forum on there. So like, not only can people go on there and learn about like all the coding stuff going on around the city, people can also just like go on there, create a topic in a forum and chat with other people. And I really like, as opposed to like having like a social media feed, I really enjoy forums. So this is more of like a personal thing. People can go on there, ask questions or whatever. I inputted a pic here just so everyone can see. I'm not sure where my little nav bar. I was down here, sorry. Yeah, so this is how I imagine it to look like. Little topic, comments and stuff. And then an upcoming events page, which I haven't actually added anything here yet, but I plan on having, what I was thinking about doing for this was having like any upcoming events like meetup, because I know you can get the meetups in your email for like open hack and stuff, or like stuff that's going on with the tech community. And also like people keep writing about the conference that's coming up. So I wanted to have like an upcoming events where it was just like a major hub for like all the tech stuff, so everybody in the community can see it, even if they don't sign up for those things. And then like, you know, they can just, even if they aren't affiliated with any organization, but they're interested in tech or just want to attend, like they can have, you know, they can see those events without having to like sign up or anything.
So I think you've got a lot of great ideas here. Do you have wireframes for these, or did you just dive right into the code?
So what I have is like, it's written here, like I have it in my notebook.
Okay. So I would say kind of formalize that a little bit more, because I think you've got a lot of great ideas, but if you dive right into the coding side of it, it's going to be hard to kind of get them all out of your head directly into the code. So I would say, even if it's on paper, that's fine, but just wireframe it out and be like, okay, for the form, what's it take for the form, right? I need a new topic button. Where does that go? Okay, what shows up? Is it just the name of that post? Okay, if I click on the name of that post in the form, I also need the ability to reply to that form, right? So where does that box show up? All of that on the form side is what's going to make it full stack, because that's what makes it interactive. I think all the resources are great, and I think using the cards to display them will be great. Same for the upcoming events. You can even store the events in the database eventually, make it so when you add a new row in the database, all the event information just appears in. But I think the form is where your full stackness is going to come out, and where I want to make sure that you've got that HTML built out so that when you go to make it interactive, you actually have all of those components built for realizing it's not just the form homepage, but it's also the create a new thread or post or whatever you want to call it, and then also the ability to respond to it. So that's where I want to see you kind of focusing in on, in addition to all the other pages of thinking through like, well, what do I want the layout of the event to be? What happens if there are multiple events? How does that show up on the page? So I think the idea for your website is great. You've got a lot going on though. So narrowing in on each one of those individual pages, I think is going to feel like a lot more progress for you.
Okay.
And if you need help with that, if you're like, all right, the form, there's a lot going on there, how would you go about building that? That's a great question to come in for a one-on-one, right? So important to keep in mind that the one-on-ones are not just, I'm doing this homework and I'm stuck on it. You can use your one-on-ones however you want. If you're like, I want a whiteboarding session and then getting started on the code for this particular section of my capstone, that's great. If you want to come in with a list of 20 questions and be like, here are all the things that we covered in class, that's great, right? You can come in with a really broad question of, I want to go through my wireframes, or I think I want to add this feature, what would it take, all the way down to, hey, you said this thing during class and I'm confused and I need a little bit of help on it. So definitely use your one-on-ones. This is where the capstone starts ticking up in that. But I think you've got a lot of great ideas. The other thing that you might want to do is jot down a feature list of like, okay, for form, what do I need to make the form work? I need to make current posts show up. I need the ability to add a new post, and I need the ability to reply to an existing post. And sometimes coming up with that text outline is really helpful for making sure that all of those features are actually somewhere in your wireframes. And once you get them in the wireframes, then it becomes much easier to code it out. So a lot of great ideas here. I don't want to discount any of them, but I think the form is where you're going to have the most fun in making that actually work.
Okay. All right. I'm excited.
Awesome. I love it. A lot of great ideas. I think you got a good starting point in your code. Now it's just a matter of like, hey, can I get everything out of my head before I get into the code? Awesome, awesome work. All right. Tara, are you with us?
I
Yes.
am. I did the wireframe. I didn't code it out yet. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Do you want to share your wireframe and your project idea?
I wrote it down, so I'm not sure if you're gonna be able to see it because I
Do you
wrote
want
it.
to just
Oh
talk
wait,
us
I'm gonna
through
take
it?
that down. Yeah, so what I want to do is I want to do a site for autism for kids.
Okay.
My little cousin kind of struggles with it, and it's, well, she's young, but she's got like an early diagnosis. And what I've noticed in the Syracuse area is that it's kind of hard to find like the resources, like daycare, schools. So how I kind of wrote it out is I want to have a section, I want to have like an intro section. I want to have like a section with tips for parents for recognizing the signs. I want to add in like a calendar with some events or community things happening in the Syracuse area. I want to put like links and resources on there. I want to add a section for sensory activities. At least like maybe like 7 to 10 different type of like sensory activities for toddlers, to kind of help parents with the kids. I want to do a little section for, I got the calendar, the events in Syracuse, and I want to do like a community blog where parents can kind of talk to each other. I know that really helped me. When I first had my daughter, I would always go on and I would be like, let me see what the other moms are talking about. Or let me look this up and see what the moms say they do with their kids. So just kind of like a blog area for them to, which is going to go in with like my sign-in feature, so they have to log in order to like leave a post, and then be able to talk amongst each other. And then I want to do a section of videos, just like good little videos that kids can watch. I know Sesame Street does a lot of things with autism, and just kind of make it condense like the information and make it easier for parents, especially parents in Syracuse, with the resources and the help that they need, especially like first time mothers, and you're just like kind of caught off guard and it's like an unexpected thing. You're like, oh, well, what do I do and who do I go to and who do I talk to? So that's where my idea is going.
Awesome. So love
It's
the
not
idea.
app-like though, so now I'm kind of nervous. Like, I don't know if I did that.
No, so the blog post itself is going to be more than enough, right? The ability to sign in and have someone write a post, and then it's going to be up to you to decide, do you want the additional functionality of maybe as an admin, you need to go through and hit the approve button before the post shows up? Or do you want to make it so whoever can create an account can post onto the site? Either way is fine, just something to think about. But I think you've got a lot of resources that you're trying to get into the site, right? So
Right.
it's going to be super important to say, hey, all of those ideas that I just shared, can I go, even if it's on my paper notebook, can I make sure that all of those are involved in my wireframe, right? Do I actually have the login page? Do I have the sign up page? Do I have a page with a form on it where they can type in the title and the content of their post and hit the submit button? Do I have the screen for the admin side if you choose to do that, to say, hey, I can hit approve or deny and actually see the blog post? All of those resources and all the features that you just shared with us, that's all great. I want to make sure that you've got that intermediary step of saying, hey, I got this all out of my head. And
Okay.
then I want you to dive into that coding side, right? Because like you've heard me say so many times, just getting that first page started is often the hardest part of the project. And it's easy to get run away with features where you go, oh, the video section would be another great thing to add. And then, oh, I can do a getting started page, right? And you get so excited about all the different things that you can build, then you get overwhelmed with starting it and getting that first page going. So I would say, get all those ideas out of your head. Make sure that you've got a visual of how to make all of those features work in your notebook, and then really hit the ground running on your code. Because before you know it, we're going to be at week 22 and you're going to still have all these great ideas and no way to actually implement them. So as soon as you feel like you've got it out of your head, that's when I really want to see, start to see some code forming. And I also want to say, prioritize what's most important to you. If it's the blog posting feature, right, that's what I want to see you starting on. If it's, hey, I want the video library or where to get started, or, the whatever it is, come up with that priority list and say, all right, well, all of these other features are important. This is really the one that I want to start on. And I think that will make it easier for you to get going in your code as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, great idea. Can't wait to see it start to form.
First of all, oh my gosh, I am literally crying because you are creating this amazing resource. First of all, Max, I'm sorry, they know I have mental health issues, but I am absolutely in tears over that because I have a person on the spectrum and there's nothing and no one until they're 8 years old and they are qualified for OPWDD. The destruction, the loneliness, like, oh my gosh, thank you so much on behalf of other mothers with special needs children. Thank you.
Yeah, I know my cousin is, her daughter is 2, and she just doesn't really know what to do. Like, so and the resources are just not there. So I'm like, well, maybe if we can create something where other people in Syracuse can connect, and other mothers and parents struggling, or not struggling, but going through the same thing, they can link up and kind of, get to know each other, help each other out. Because I relied on the internet moms so much during my pregnancy and when my daughter was a toddler. So
thank you.
Awesome. Moving on, Corwin, I have you up next.
Oh, my bad. It wasn't working for a second. Hello. Welcome to my TED Talk. I don't have all that much because I've been struggling with some things here and there, but I'm gonna at least try to show you what I got going. Oh no, I just closed it out. Oh, give me a second. I'm sorry. There we go. Is this going through?
No. Oh, there it's coming.
All right. Okay. So mine is it's called Sport Finder. So right now, basically what I wanted to do with this, I wanted to basically create a little app or a web-based map that kids or athletes can go through and basically find specific facilities that they need to use to help better themselves in their sports.
Okay.
Beyond, because I know specifically in Syracuse, I don't know if it's all areas, but I know a lot of the times, like I played lacrosse, so I know like maybe during the summer there wouldn't be that many lacrosse goals out. So maybe if there's a way for kids to be able to select, go to that, find it, filter it out, choose a certain thing, and then I also wanted to add a functionality that people would be able to like add information in there so people could see it. So if the goals got taken away or if the nets or something were broken, like people could know that when that information can be relayed over to the city as well. I've been working on trying to get this map going, but I got to work on the JavaScript aspect of it and get some APIs going, mainly so I can kind of centralize the map to Syracuse itself, because that's where I want to start on first. But then obviously you can go in and then adjust it based on what like the zip code and stuff like that.
Do you have wireframes, whether they're Figma or paper?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got a couple pages. That's been like the main thing that's had me kind of stuck, because I'm like, I could get everything done really in one page, kind of just have like a pop-up login at the bottom, and then all the functionalities would kind of just pop up onto the page once you log into it. That's what I wanted to do, instead of creating 3-4 separate pages that you would have to, go into so you can log in, then have to go back just so you can be able to see. Like, that's a lot.
Sure.
So hopefully I can get
So
it
I
between
would
just
say
the map page and then the login.
focus on that, because we'll get to the JavaScript required to get a map to work, right? So I would say kind of push that over to like a small div on the side, and then say, hey, what can I focus on functionality wise? What's the filter drop down for the sport? Or maybe whatever your filters are, I would start building out that interface. I think you're on a good track here. But we'll get into how the JavaScript it takes and how we can pull in other people's JavaScript and all of that stuff. So I would say focus on the rest of your interface now, and then we'll find ways to connect the interface that you're building into the mapping directly. And it's really tough sometimes, because you're like, well, the map's the core part of all of it, right? Like that's where I want to show all the data. And you're like, well, I want to get that working first. And sometimes as an engineer, you got to work in reverse, right? You've got to get everything else working. And once you get that working, then it will work better with the map. So I would say, I think it's a great idea. I think that you're going to be able to build out a pretty cool database that's going to manifest itself on a map layer, but focus on the rest of the interface now, and then it will become much easier for the map down the road.
Sounds good.
Awesome work.
Thank you.
Okay, it is 7 o'clock. I have not forgotten about people. Monte, if you're with us after the break, I will come to you. I've got Janaya, Kenny, and Taylor left on the list. And then I believe I have everyone. If I forgot anyone that does want to go, I will circle back to you guys. But let's take a break. Let's be back at 7:25. We will wrap up our capstone check-in. Awesome work so far. Can't wait to see the rest of your projects. We will get our first JavaScript in browser project set up, and then we will pick it up there starting tomorrow. Go on break. See you guys at 7:25.
Welcome back, everyone.
All right, we got through the vast majority of everyone. I believe we only have 3 people left. And so we are going to kick it off with Janaya. Yes, Shania, are you with us?
I'm with you now. Now, before break, you called on somebody. I'm gonna go though, but I just want to say, everybody Capstone is amazing, and now y'all got me rethinking mines because I don't feel like mines is as important as everybody's. So I don't have much because I was down for a whole week. So basically, let me find it. Okay, so I gotta share with you guys 1 second. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, you're good.
Okay.
Everyone's capstone is very individual, right? This is not about who's is most important or who has the most code done. This is about just making sure that you guys feel like you've got good momentum, that you don't have any roadblocks, that you know, you're getting the direction you need and the feedback. And so that's what's important.
Okay, so this is kind of just like part of the code. I do have, son, I'm back in class. You gotta go sit down. All right, and for the website I have so far, 1 second, you guys, sorry. Okay, so I am a mom. I do have 3 kids. So what I was going with, I was indecisive because I have a business that I already started. It's called Kids Clothes on the Go. But then I wanted to do something because everything I think of is wrapped around kids. So as everybody know, or most people know, everybody call their kids their broke best friends. So I wanted to create a app just for kids, as far as in where parents could add money to the account. And with the account, it's just for the kids. The kids can purchase anything that kids want, as far as candy, fidgets, Roblox, cards for their games, or any accessories or things like that in that nature. That's a cheap amount that's just for kids, so that they don't be always asking for their parents' cards or anything in that nature. So this is like what I started with. So this is kind of as far as in like what I wanted the home screen to be, and then the parents will have to start by signing up the program. So when they sign up the program, the next page would have been like the kids' information, if it's a female or if it's a male, their age range, and then their name. So that would be like basically their profile. And then you have the payment screen, then the login screen, and then the home screen. The home screen would deduct as far as in if it's a boy or if a girl profile. So if it's a girl profile, it'll have all merchandise that's basically for kids or anything that's for girls for them to purchase. And then you have a screen that would direct, if it is a male, it would be able to direct for all boys, anything that boys may want to purchase. And then you will have as far as in like your cart, your checkout screen. And then I wanted it where when they are, well, with their balance, it would be some way to generate for kids to understand how much money they have in their balance. So I'm not sure if there's a way to either like have a voice memo on there, or if I would have to make it where it's a digital content where sorry about that, where the kids can actually see like their money, I guess I'm trying to get at. So yeah, I guess that's like kind of it. But then I had the thoughts in the process of making this. I had the thoughts because I have something called Kids Clothes on the Go, as far as where basically exactly what it sounds like, kids clothes that's on the go. So basically it'd be a website where parents can purchase clothing, but on the website there's forms where you could generate time frames that you may want a delivery straight to your door. If you want a meetup place where you want your stuff delivered to, you can have time slots where you want it to, it doesn't matter, like as far as it will have a time frame, but it's like late at night, like, you know, some parents is up at nighttime when their kids is asleep. So if you want a delivery late at night, then you can get a delivery late at night. So I was kind of like stuck in between the two. Once I started this, I started thinking about the other thing. So
So I think either one of them have plenty of potential, right? I think both of them certainly meet the capstone requirements, right? So I think for you, it's going to be, hey, which one are you going to be more excited about working on for the next 4 months, right? Because they both have great ideas. Sometimes it helps to kind of wireframe through both of them and take it a step beyond the wireframing, right? Actually think through what's on the screen, what's this button labeled as, when you click this button, where does it go to? Kind of planning all of that out, because sometimes when you wireframe both of them out in their entirety, you realize that you're more excited about one than you are with the other.
okay.
I think, like I said, I think both of them are really great ideas, but it's going to be important to narrow in on one of them because you're a little behind on your coding, right? We want to start feeling that showing up in the browser. So I think that that's something that you should spend the next couple days on, of like thinking out. Maybe you're an outline person, so do bullet points out and say, oh, well, it's not just about being able to load money onto the card. It's about being able to have suggested merchandise. And then, okay, if that suggested merchandise is there, how do we, deduct that from the child's balance so that we're keeping track of how much of that is being spent, or right, get into that nitty gritty, because when you get that out into your wireframe, you may realize, hey, this other one seems a little bit more simpler and is the one that I think is going to help the most. Or you could look at it on the flip side and be like, yeah, this is more features in it and more details, but this is the one that I'm passionate about building. So that's how I would look at it. But I think they're both really great ideas. You just need to narrow in on that within the next week or two and say, all right, this is the one that I'm committing to. Now, let me make sure that I've got as much of this out of my head as possible, and devote that energy right into your code.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Max.
No problem. And I really think, like, as you were sharing your project, you can hear the passion, right? You can hear that you've thought through all of these details. This isn't just some idea that popped into your head. You explained it in detail, right? So you can go back to this recording on YouTube tonight and like jot all of that down. Make sure you've got all of that captured, because I think we can see the passion there. Now it's just a matter of channeling it into your wireframes, getting it out of your head, and then getting it into your code. And I think that that's when it's going to start to materialize a little bit more.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
All right. Second to last, certainly not least, we have Kenny.
Yeah. So, can anybody see me?
Yes, you're good. Sorry, the hesitancy that you hear in me calling on you is me actually making sure that you're on the call after I call your name.
Nah, you good. So, I didn't really do much of like a wireframe kind of thing, because I like to outline things, I guess. So I just kind of wrote like in a capstone outline of what I get done. I don't know if that's kind of like acceptable or not. I can make a wireframe if you want. That won't be really a problem. Yeah, I can share my screen right now.
Yeah, sure, go for it. The wireframe isn't super important, right? It's not like you're going to be showing off your wireframe at graduation. If you're someone who looks at the outline and can immediately translate that into code, you can definitely skip that wireframe step. So it's more of just a tool of what's helpful to you, as opposed to like a hard requirement of something that you have to turn in.
Cool. So, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Outline. So yeah, so basically, obviously, the capstone project I'm doing basically kind of like some type of travel planner kind of thing. So kind of help you plan your travels if you're going anywhere. Basically the purpose of it is to basically have like a homepage where the user goes and they just kind of put in a location that they want to go and visit. It's kind of like similar to Expedia or Hotel or Airbnb or other exploring apps that I've used before. now that I think about it, when I look at my project, it's gonna be API heavy. So it's gonna be a lot of different APIs involved in terms of just fetching data from locations, displaying things to do around the local area, flight costs, hotel costs, and even restaurant information as well. It actually features too. I think about probably putting like an interactive map on a page somewhere as well, was like kind of like pinpoint like market locations to kind of see these locations live as well. In terms of the coding, I didn't really get too far, so let me show what I have here. Yeah, so in terms of the coding, I don't know, I've not really gone too far because I still want to know exactly how I plan on laying this out. But essentially this is like my nav bar up here. I haven't really kind of styled it to how I want it exactly. I can just kind of go through that. These little dash border lines that you kind of see around here, this is just me kind of referencing seeing how it's gonna look when I adjust the page and everything.
Sure.
Because it might be probably like I'm thinking about mobile responsive too as well. Could be like an app you can use. But yeah, I was thinking about maybe down here having like the map as well. And this is gonna be like the list of the popular attractions, landmarks. Maybe you could type in a location here and then there's a search button. But this is just kind of like a rough draft kind of deal. So like hopefully go through and kind of rebuild this how I want it to be.
Awesome. Yeah, I would start thinking in, that's when that wireframe is going to be really helpful, right? Whether you do it on paper, whether you do it in Figma, it kind of forces you to say, what is this layout, right? If I'm going to show the hotel information and the flight information and maybe some local restaurants, how do I do that? And that's when you start getting into, oh, well, maybe I can do columns across the top and then have the map down at the bottom. So the using multiple APIs doesn't really scare me, but starting to think through what that layout is and loading it in with dummy data, because after you get through Ryan's module, that's when you can start playing with the APIs and making those calls and all of that stuff. But for now, and this goes for everyone, don't let pending information hold you up from getting your interface fully complete, because otherwise what ends up happening is you make that API call and then you're like, what do I do with this, right? And all of that's raw data that's going to be sitting in a JavaScript object and you're like, well, I don't know what to do with this, right? So thinking through getting your interface fully complete before you even get access to those APIs or make those API calls or see what data is coming back will be really helpful. What you're going to see in class in the next couple days is, hey, data and the HTML that it shows up in are very interrelated, right? We can't just take this data and be like, here you go. Here's this like all this quotes and commas and syntax, and we need some way to format that. So Kenny, I think you're off to a great start there. I would say, focus in on what does that interface look like. You've got the search bar up there. We're going to have to do some work to make the button work. All of that's great. We'll get to all of that in JavaScript. But if you build out kind of that example page of, hey, what would it look like if someone typed in Syracuse right now? What would come up with that itinerary planner, right? Possibilities, dinosaur barbecue, you want the phone number there or the price to show up. Great. What does that interface look like? All right. What other things do you need? Maybe I'm going to show the hotel and how many stars it has and the average nightly price. Great. What does that screen look like? Is that a table? Maybe all three of those screens look very similar, but you want to start thinking through kind of, hey, I've got that requirements list. What does that requirements look like? And then we'll get into making it all work. All that makes sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. All right, let's wrap it up with Taylor.
Alrighty, how's it going, everyone? I got a wireframe to share and a mini demonstration that this is based off of. So for the wireframe, my overall project is to be a homebrew D&D character spreadsheet that is essentially just meant to can make all your calculations. So you just have to change the few data points that you have to every time you level up, and you won't forget about any adjustments everywhere else in all of your stats. I started this years ago on Google Sheets and Excel, and I've just been kind of reverse engineering it into HTML and CSS. And for my demonstration, I've got this on Google Sheets. So essentially, it's going to start off with a sheet that's where you input all your basic data at character creation. And then all of that information is going to pull from databases and run calculations to translate onto a cleaned up character sheet. That's just trying to keep things organized. I've had to reorganize how I have all these boxes laid out just to fit the divs and columns and rows and stuff like that.
Sure.
So that's been fun to work out. I'm going to have various text boxes for people to input information that changes throughout the game, as well as drop downs to change what's in inventories and stuff like that. All of that will determine what's being populated in other drop downs. Like for this, for example, I've got all these, what I call my background or my back end data, which is just all of my information that just gets pulled, just going through the D&D handbooks and organizing it as much as possible. And then all of these different things connect to these working tabs where you can easily plug in your classes into a multi-class thing if you do decide to go into that. And you can have your spells all organized based off of whatever your class is. It'll only populate that stuff so that it's not all cluttered and confusing like the book can tend to be when you're learning. And I'm kind of going with the same idea that Google Sheets and Excel has, with the tabs at the bottom to shift between the different pages by using this navigation bar that I'm moving up to the top. And on the wireframe, I just have it displaying the button for whatever tab it's displaying. But in the end, it's going to look more like this one where you can go all the way across as you need to.
Love it.
And without getting way into all the details that I'm not even sure about, I'll just leave it at that.
Do you have a jump start on your code?
I actually am working on the HTML this week. I think I've got my layouts of my columns and rows figured out, so I feel pretty confident in getting that all just knocked out this week, hopefully by the end of the week.
Nice,
Fingers
nice.
crossed.
Yeah, so I would say you're clearly well versed in like navigating the spreadsheets and knowing how much it takes to go into it. Try and narrow your scope. And I think that you've got the right focus right now of like, I just have to get the pages created, right? And learning that that layout is going to be different on web than it's going to be in a spreadsheet, right? Like that's a great lesson to learn early on, because there are a lot of jobs that will come to you and be like, so I'm using this tiny little spreadsheet, and you open it and it's got like 10,000 cells in it and different tabs and everything that you're showing. And they're like, oh, I just wanted to do what this spreadsheet's doing. And it's like, well, how long did it take you to build that spreadsheet? Oh, well, a couple days. Can you make that into an app for me? And it's like, well, yeah, but not in a couple of days. I can't, right? Like there is certain user functionality that's much easier in HTML, but takes much longer to build out, right? And so I think you're going to find that if you take that approach and you're like, let me just get everything on the page first, and then I'll work out how it's going to work and where the information is going to save and how things get calculated and what dropdowns fill in and all of that stuff. That will become much easier once you get those first couple pages standing up and just being able to like navigate to those different tabs that you have at the top. So I think it's a great idea, but I don't want the sheer scope of all of the data that it takes to pull it off to scare you. Focus in on that interface, and I think from there it should be much easier.
Yeah, I think I'm drawing the line at maybe 2 classes, just from the main player's handbook, just to focus in on it, but like HTML, CSS, one step at a time.
Yes, you got it. Awesome. Looks like a great project.
Thank you.
All right, circling back. Monte, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just having an issue getting into my my other laptop because I got so many. So I'm trying to go through the reset process right now to like without deleting stuff. I'm sorry. Yeah,
It's fine. Do you
that
want
wasn't on
to
purpose at all, but I swear that wasn't on purpose at all.
do you want to just share your project idea with the class?
Yeah, I could definitely do that. So I spoke about it a little bit before in some of the I guess pre-class before we started a few weeks ago. I'm creating an app. The app I'm creating is going to be called Play. So the premise of the app is to gather the API from places like Apple Music and Spotify and be able to share it amongst playlists. So if you're at a party, like a DJ party, you hear a really good set, and that DJ happens to use like whatever software, like a Serato or Algorithm, and you want that same playlist, but you don't have that same streaming service. So if you don't want to download Apple Music or you don't want to download Spotify or Tidal, using this app would allow you to gather all those songs from the playlist that one user has, and it puts you into your own DSP, which is distributed service provider. So it's going to be able to kind of interchange. I want to really attack it like for DJs and people who like playlists a lot, because playlists is how people find a lot of music versus listening to albums. Most people listen to a playlist, whether that's on Spotify and hearing like Rap Caviar or something like that on one of those, which is really popular. It's able to kind of help you share music without having to force you to download Tidal or Spotify if you have one or the other, or Napster or whatever else people may have. So that's what I'm working on. I did draw up on my. I didn't start coding on that particular part yet because we haven't gone over APIs yet, and mine is really API heavy because I need to gather the API. The interface I do have it drawn out, which is pretty much being able to log into your particular DSP, which would be Spotify, Tidal, or Apple Music. And once you log into that with that particular DSP, you would take the playlist ID or the name of that playlist and put it into that search bar, and it'll automatically pull from the API from your particular DSP that you're using on your phone.
Awesome. So great idea. Think you'll get a lot of traction with being able to work with the different APIs. Don't let that stop you from doing the interface though, right? Because there are things that you're going to need to think through of like, all right, create account, log in. Those are simple, but then like, what's that page look like where the list of all of the services that I support looks like? What's the login button or the connect button look like? Okay, nothing's stopping you from doing that in your HTML, right? Who knows if you can actually use that API, but for now you can build out that page of saying, hey, here's Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, here are the login buttons to connect that. Okay, great. Now what's that screen look like? You're probably going to want to have them be able to paste in a URL, right? So where's that input? Where are the instructions for that? Okay, when they hit the go button, even though it's not actually working yet, what does that result screen look like? Is there a share button, or is there a copy to clipboard button to get that playlist link, right? Maybe there needs to be a waiting screen to say, please wait generating this playlist on Apple Music, because if you've made a playlist on Spotify, that's going to be a different link on Apple Music, but you're going to have to make an API call to load all of the songs up to that, right? So those are all little interface details that you're going to have to do regardless of what the API looks like or how you pull that off. So I would start thinking through those and get a jump start on coding that out.
Okay, cool.
Awesome. And Rain, I think, was the last one, but I do not see her. Okay. Last call. Did I forget anyone who did want to go? Any comments for the group before we dive back into our JavaScript? One-on-one feedback. I'm sorry, not one-on-one. The 30-second feedback form tonight is going to be really important, right? I want to know how you guys think this capstone check-in went. I want to know if you think it's worth spending almost 2 hours going through everyone's different projects and seeing them all. The next capstone check-in is scheduled for, that would have been helpful information for me to have pulled up, week 13. So we don't see your capstone progress again until after 4th of July. We come back on July 10th and we see your next capstone check-in. So that's when we want to start seeing some of these ideas, having all of the pages built out. That's when we want to start seeing your styling. That's when we want to start seeing you thinking about your APIs or some functionality. We can get into some filtering information there, right? All of you guys have very different ideas, and that's great. That's the magic of the capstone, is being able to apply it to something that you are passionate about, right? So keep working on them. Do not let this creep up on you. Do not think that because our next check-in isn't until July that you are off the hook and that you can forget about it, right? We want to be making progress here, and you guys are always, always, always welcome to schedule one-on-ones with me. So if you're working on a particular feature or section and you really want to get that page done, that's what's important, right? It's one thing to be a little bit behind now, to not have your HTML started, to have some ideas on a wireframe. It is a whole nother story if you make it to week 13. That is the halfway point, over the halfway point in our program, and you don't have your capstone started. That's when major red flags start coming up, right? And we really want to see your code really hit the text editor. We want to see things start forming in VS Code. So that's where we want to get you to. Any capstone questions before we get into our JavaScript?
I just wanted to say, I am so impressed with how far you guys are compared to where we were in cohort 1. It all looks really good. And I didn't do any styling on mine, but Jill and I are building one together.
Nice. All right. We are going to dive back in to JavaScript. So I am going to head into my code folder. I am going to create a new folder called week 7. I am going to create a new folder in there, and I'm going to call this day 1. I'm going to take my day 1 and drag it into my VS Code. I'm going to create a new file called index.html. And I am going to do my exclamation point enter. I am going to say an H1 in here called hello JavaScript. I will start a live share with you guys and put it in the Zoom chat so you can go ahead and join that. And finally, I'm going to hit my go live button and make sure that that pops open in Chrome and that I can see my hello JavaScript showing up. And I will make sure that the live server is shared. It is. And I will give you guys a minute to get in there. Did you miss all the VS Code setup? We're back, baby.
So Nathan was talking about going through GitHub to Visual Studio Code as a new workflow, but you don't want that.
If you are setting up repositories for every project, there is something to be said about going through that workflow. However, I personally like to finish a project and then kind of sit down and go through a GitHub workflow to make sure the repositories are published, to decide if I'm going to go ahead and make that live on GitHub pages, to kind of go through the DevOps process. That's not to say that you shouldn't be using Git normally, but for the sake of getting set up in class quickly and being able to work on projects, I personally won't go through that flow, but that is a flow that you should certainly consider after you're done, after your project's complete, of, hey, I want to have this up on my GitHub so that people can view it on my portfolio, see what code I'm working on, all of that stuff. That's when it's very helpful to do all of that.
Okay, thanks.
And once you get a folder created, you can always create a Git repository and link it to GitHub. It's not something that is necessarily easier or better to do right at the beginning of a project, although you certainly can. Okay, so far, the JavaScript that we've seen is down in the terminal, right? We've right-clicked on here. We went to open in integrated terminal. We did our node and our script name, and we hit enter, and we saw the output. But the terminal is where node runs. It isn't the most common place that we see JavaScript. The most common place that we actually see JavaScript code, and I'm talking not just in this class, but globally, is in the web browser. And all of those concepts that we've learned about variables and loops and data types and functions and all of that syntax that we're learning is great, but how do we apply that in a browser setting? So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we're going to make a file called script.js. And in here, we are going to console log out hello world. Now it takes 2 steps for the browser to actually show us where our hello world is at. So new file, we call it script.js. I type in console.log. I'm making sure to use my parentheses for my parameters, my quotes for a string. I put all of that in there. I come back over to my browser and nothing shows up here. The hello world doesn't show up here. That's because I haven't opened my console. The console is a tool for us developers to understand what's happening in our JavaScript. The console is never meant for an end user to go snooping around or to see the output. Because of that, we need to tell Chrome, hey, we want to be able to see the console. We're developers. We want to know what our code is doing. In order to do that, we are going to right-click and go down to Inspect. And once we have Inspect open, you can see this debugger tool that we've seen before. We know we can pop open our body and see our H1 and all of that's fine, but we're going to open up a new layer of our developer tools here. We're going to go into the console. Now this console has nothing in it. And I'm like, well, that's not good. I told it I put my console log over here. Well, just like when we create our style.css sheet, we need to tell our HTML, hey, heads up HTML, there's a JavaScript tag, a JavaScript file that you should load in. Now, we don't do that in the head section because if we do it in the head, it can actually slow down the loading of the page. Instead, we go down to the bottom of our body before the closing body tag, and we put in a script. And instead of using href, which would make total sense because that's what link tags use and a tags use and all of that stuff, no, instead JavaScript decides to be difficult and uses the src tag instead. src stands for source. Okay, so we put in the src. We're going to call it script.js so it knows where to go. And normally we would just put in our closing tag and call it a day. But you notice that closing tag is red. Well, it turns out that that SRC is not the only pesky thing that does not align with the rest of HTML. We also need to not make it a self-closing tag. We need to close out the script tag ourselves. Kind of annoying that we can't use self-closing tags, but turns out that some ancient developers over at Microsoft and Internet Explorer decided that self-closing script tags were not going to be valid, and it would ignore your JavaScript unless you put in its own closing tag. Don't ask me why. It should work. It doesn't. Make sure that when you use a script tag, you close it. There doesn't need to be any content in between it. All we're doing is we're linking that script in. So as soon as I save this file and come over to my browser, I now see my hello world showing up in the console. If you don't have a hello world, raise your hand and I can help you. Give you guys a minute to catch up there. 2 files, index.html, script.js. In our script.js, we put a console log hello world. If you don't have it showing up or have a red error here instead, read that error, see what's going on. In our index.html, we came down to the bottom of our body tag. We put in our script, our SRC. We put in the file name, we close out that script tag, and we are good to go. Now, the console is not only help. Oh, Shania, what's up?
See, I'm not on a monitor right now, so my screen look crazy, but I don't see hello world.
Okay. Do you have the console log hello world added into your script.js?
Maybe I don't. Yes, wait. In the script, yeah, I do have it in there.
Okay. Are both files saved?
Yes.
And then does your line 11 look exactly like this?
Yes.
Okay. Share your screen. Let's take a look.
I might be missing something because I'm on just the computer. I don't have the
Okay. Refresh this page. Okay. I don't see it there. Switch me over to your code and let's take a look at that. You're going to probably have to stop your screen share and restart it because you just picked the Chrome window when you started your share.
Okay.
You have a SCR instead of an SRC.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No problem. Anyone else need help? Okay, so for our first little app, we are going to build a little to-do list. So I'm going to go back to my JavaScript. I'm sorry, to my HTML, and I split my screen here. If you guys want to split your screen, you can grab the script.js, right click on it and hit split down, and that will open it down at the bottom. And then you can have both up at the same time. Or if you like to split side to side, you can also do that, whatever is comfortable for you. So I'm going to take out my hello JavaScript. And what I'm going to put in is to-do list app. I'm going to save that. That updates over here. If I'm thinking about my little to-do list, there are kind of 2 important features, right? And we always want to think through our project requirements as engineers before we dive into it, because sometimes we realize that there are some additional features that we didn't think through until we started thinking about other features. So what's probably the most important thing in a to-do list app?
Add an item.
You're gonna add an item, okay? And
Boxes.
if you add an item, you probably need to be able to see what items you've added. That's it. So we're thinking as engineers, there are two things and only two things for right now for the MVP. Deadline is important. Check it off is important. We'll come back to all of those. What we're on right now is what's the minimum viable product? I need to be able to type in an item and I need to be able to see what items are in my list. So if I'm thinking, all right, if I need to be able to type in an item, I need some interface to be able to do that. So I'm going to come down below my H1 and I'm going to add an input with a type. And that type is going to be text. And I'm going to close that off and I'll say placeholder. And let's say item to add. And I save that and I get a very ugly text box, but a text box nonetheless. Self-closing tag here, item to add. Feeling good about that. I also need a button that says add item. I save that. I've got my little item to add, got my add item button, and that's it. This is where our HTML fun ends and our JavaScript party begins. We're here and it's like, okay, I get this and I can type in, you know, finish app and I click add item and nothing happens. We are crossing the line between what HTML can accomplish and where JavaScript really starts. This JavaScript is our interactivity, right? This is when we are listening for what we call an event. An event is anything that the user interacts with on our page. An event could be that the user types in a letter. An event could be that the user scrolls up or down the page. An event could be that the user collapses the window. An event could be the user navigates to another tab. But the most common event that we will be using is when a user clicks on a button. So what we do is we come back over to our HTML and we go to our button and we say, hey, on click of this button. What do we want to do on this on click? Well, we want to add an item. And when we add that item, we are also going to get the details of the event. Okay, so we do that. I come back over here, I hit add item, and I get add item is not defined. And this is one of the reasons I like JavaScript more than HTML and CSS. Because your HTML and CSS can look perfect, and then you nudge the window a little bit and you got to go debug it and you don't know where it's broken, you just know it doesn't look right. JavaScript's a little bit more specific than that. JavaScript is telling me add item is not defined, but look at what's going on in the console here. It says index HTML :12. That :12 is telling me right on line number 12, it's trying to do this add item thing, and it's telling me, I don't know what add item is. That's not defined. How do I add an item? Well, we need to tell it in our JavaScript how to add an item to the list. So I come down here to the bottom and I say const add item is going to equal this event that comes in via a parameter. Then I need to tell it what's going to happen when that item is added. Now, we could be doing multiple lines. In fact, we will be doing multiple lines of code in order to make that add item show up. So we have to make this into a function. This happens to be called an arrow function because the equal and the greater than sign ends up looking like an arrow. So we do this arrow function to say, hey, this is some new thing. This is a new variable. This variable is going to be called add item. Add item is going to get details of this event that happened. And what do we want to happen when this add item runs? We are going to console.log item added. So I save that. Nothing happens over here. I show my hello world because I put my hello world up here. That's still there. Okay. I come back over and I type in something and I hit add item, and I should get item added showing up in my console. If you don't, go back through, even though we only wrote 3 lines of code here, this is where we start seeing issues if everything is not lining up perfectly. In my on click, you will notice it is all lowercase. You will notice my add item exactly matches the add item that I've created down here, including that capital I on both sides. Also, make sure that you've got your parentheses and the event. Make sure that you've got your quotes lining up. And then finally, check every little detail of the syntax here. Const is saying we're declaring a new variable. Add item is going to be the name of our variable or our function. The equal sign is telling it what the function is going to be doing. The parentheses and the event are telling it what information is getting sent into that function. The equal arrow is telling our JavaScript that this is going to be a function. There's going to be multiple lines of code here. The opening curly brace is going to tell it when our function starts. The closing curly brace is going to tell it where our function ends. And finally, console.log is telling it to output this thing called item added. And again, we only see all of that information when we come over here and click the add item button. All right. Anyone have questions? Did we get to this point?
And okay, this is gonna be so annoying, but can I just have like one more walkthrough of what that little function is doing?
Yep. So you'll notice that when I load this page in the browser for the first time, item added doesn't show up down here, right? What we're doing is we're bridging the gap between our HTML and our CSS and our JavaScript, excuse me. So what's happening here is this on click is called an event, right? Whenever you see on, you know it's going to be some event. An event is anything that the user is interacting with. In this case, we're looking for that event of a click. What's happening is our HTML is saying, hey, they have clicked on this. What do you want me to do? I want the HTML to go find something called add item and go run that add item code. So it goes down to our JavaScript and says, hey, I found something called add item. I'm going to get the details of the event. We're not happening to use that now, but it's good to have that in case we do need to reference it. What's going to happen now is the JavaScript takes over and says, thanks, HTML. You told me that that thing was clicked on. What do you want me to do? I'm going to now go do whatever is between these curly braces. Okay. Is that helpful? You need any review on that?
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Well, Max, you told me that everything we're going to be learning is practical and console logging out item added isn't really practical. Okay, good point. What if instead of logging out item added, we log out whatever they typed into this box here? Well, just like we can use our HTML to reach into our JavaScript and say, hey, go do this add item thing, We can also do that in reverse. We can tell our HTML or JavaScript to go into the HTML and get some piece of the data out for us. But in order to do that, we need to be able to tell it what item we want to go reach into. Wouldn't it be nice if we could add an ID onto this of something like inputted text? That way, in our JavaScript, when the add item code runs, we can say const input box. I'm going to make a variable. We're going to call the variable input box is equal to document. Wait a second, document. Where have we heard of document before? Oh, HTML document. Go to that HTML where this script is running, where this item is trying to be added, and get an element, an HTML element by the ID. Notice that this is a lowercase d, not an uppercase d. And what element do I want it to get? Remember, these parentheses are giving the function that get element by ID additional information of what it needs in order for it to run. Well, what ID am I going to give it? I'm going to tell it inputted text. Okay. Well, that kind of looks good. I don't know what any of it's doing yet. So I save it. I come over here. I type in test. I hit add item, and I still get item added. I'm like, WTF, man. I told you to go get the element by the ID, and you put it in input box. What are we missing here?
Console log input box.
Exactly. We told it to go get the input box, but then we didn't tell it to do anything with it. We said, hey, go shove it in memory. And then we never asked for it out of memory. We never told it to do anything with it. So I'm going to save. I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to type in hi and hit add item. And that's kind of interesting. We've got some HTML inside of our JavaScript console. And I'm like, all right, this is a step in the right direction, but I'm not getting the word hi out of that. Well, this is where the DOM, where you'll hear it referred to as the DOM, the document object model, comes into play here. The document object model is how JavaScript and HTML have agreed to talk to each other. That is the way that we can tell our JavaScript code to go get pieces of information out of the HTML. And our HTML can know that when we send some command in JavaScript, where to map that information into. One of the most common document object model properties is called .value. And you'll find that oftentimes the names of the HTML attributes line up with what we're going to use down here. So I'm going to console.log out my input box's value. So I save that, I come back over here, I type in DOM and I hit add item. And now look what's showing up in my JavaScript. Now you may be saying, Max, this is all great. How in God's name do you know what get element by ID is? How do you know to use like .value? All right, that's a great question. I'm going to Google get HTML tag in JavaScript using ID. And what's the first thing that comes up? How do I get an element ID value with JavaScript? They're using get elements by tag name, which is a good example, but you can also see get element by ID, and here's the official MDN. And if you go into MDN, it's going to give you an example, the parameters, and what information is coming back, including the on-click that we were just learning about, and exactly how to use it in here. So, baby chick is okay. Baby click, I'm not quite sure what that is, but use your documentation, right? All of this is new to you guys. It is totally okay to word Google queries exactly like this, and know that the first answer is not, or the first result is not always going to be, oh, baby click. Now I got it, like a light bulb clicking. Okay, thank you. The reason why I'm showing you this documentation is oftentimes students say, like, this is all great. I see you writing it. It's working for me, but how would I know how to do this? The good news is it's just going to be project after project, and you're going to see all of these concepts starting to click more and more because we're just using them. So some of it is just exposure, but also know that there is documentation here, and you don't even need to know the exact name of what you're trying to do. You can actually say, how do I get some HTML stuff in my JavaScript? And you'll get that right answer on Google. So don't be afraid to Google things, but also know that throughout all of these projects, you're going to see more and more of these functions come up. Allie, what's up?
Okay, so I was just seeing, so will we have to create another function in order to make it so like the form deletes after you add an item?
Hold that thought until tomorrow.
Okay.
Or until after class. Let me see how much I can get done in the next 7 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, so we're here, and I've got this thing. I got this thing in here, and I click add item, and it shows up here, and I can take this and type something else in and click add item, and now I see something show up in my console. And I'm like, okay, feeling good about that. Now I want all of the items that I've added to show up here as a bullet point list. Okay, well, let's baby step that. Maybe before we get bullet points, let's just make this word show up in my HTML. Well, in order to do that, my JavaScript needs a place that it can punch back through into my HTML to show those list results. So I'm going to go back to my add item, and I'm going to make a new div. And in that div, I'm going to put an ID in here of list items. Okay. Well, in here, just like I can get element by ID and get the value out of it, I can also say const list div equals document get element by ID list items. And what do I want to do with those list items? I want to take that list div and set the inner HTML of that div. In other words, there are a lot of different properties that we can target. We just saw .value. We could use .style and apply some CSS if we wanted to. What we're going to do is say, hey, go inside that list div. Go into this section of the div and put in my input box .value. So I save, I come back over here, and I say my item. I click add item and look at what shows up right underneath it. My item. And it's kind of cool. We could even go back into the elements tab, pop open our body, and look at what's going on here. My div ID list items, which initially started out as empty, now has my item in it. We just generated our first dynamic HTML. You just made your first web app. Yes, it's a very dumb web app, and yes, it's not very functional, and yes, it's got a ton of problems in it that we need to fix, but we just made a web app. We made something that's interactive, that a user can type something in and get a result out of. I'm going to answer Allie's question, and then we're going to stop here for the night, and pick up here tomorrow. Now, we've got a problem that I'm just going to plant in your head for tomorrow. This is great. This is showing up. But if I type in another item and hit add item, it now overwrites it. My item is now gone, and all I have is another item. Well, that's not much of a list if I can only have one thing in it at a time. So what's happening? If I come back over to my JavaScript and I see my button here and I see my on click, well, the next time I click on this button, I'm going to come down to my function, and the function is going to run again as if it's never been run before. So it's going to go get the inputted text, this input. It's going to go get the value from it. It's then going to go get my list items div. It's going to take that list div, target the inner HTML, and this inner HTML is going to say, forget whatever was in the inner HTML, take whatever's on the right side of this equal. What's on the right side of this equal? It's the input box's value. Take that new value and shove it into the HTML inside of my list div. All right, so we're going to have to figure that out tomorrow. How do we make it so multiple items show up in that list? One other thing I wanted to show you, though, before we call it a night, is what if we want to clear out whatever text is in here to make it easier to add other items? Well, the same way that we can use inner HTML to set a new value, we can also do with our input box. We can set our input box's value to an empty string. And by doing so, when we add an item, you'll notice our input now clears back out. So the reason why we're showing this is we're seeing that the document object model is bi-directional. We can go get the items and get information out of it, like the value. We can go get our div called list items and put in the value into that HTML. But we can also take our input box that we got by the element ID from up here, target the value, and make the new value an empty string.
So it's just for the empty string. So the reason that it's clearing it out is because
there's nothing in the string.
Okay, so it just resets. Like, is that?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
There's gonna be an arrow function to keep it going. I don't know.
What?
To keep adding the things is gonna be like an arrow function to add plus, like, I don't know.
No, not an arrow function. No.
Hint, hint. You got to create an array.
Nope.
Oh, really?
You could, but that's a more complex solution to the problem.
Oh, thank God.
So we come back up here, and just to show whatever string you put in here, it will set this box. So if we say item and hit add item, you see it now says stuff here. So in order to clear it, we just give it an empty string. We could use a for loop, Palash, but we would need an array to use that for loop. There's an even more simple solution that you guys will have to wait until tomorrow to see.
Come on, man, tell us so we can practice.
The answer is concatenation.
Oh, okay. Let's try.
I'm going to stick around for a couple minutes. I will also make sure that this code gets uploaded on GitHub so you can reference it. And Jen, I'm coming to you first for help. If anyone else needs help, feel free to raise your hand. I will stick around for the next couple minutes.
I restarted my computer now. All my pins are gone on the browser.
Did you see Allie's tip with history and restore tabs?
Yeah, I just can't figure out how to get to the history.
Okay, Sherry's going to take a look. Oh, and don't forget to fill out the 30-second feedback so I know how you guys are feeling about the Capstone check-in.
Can you drop the link to the feedback, Max?
Yes. Sorry, let me just
I figured
push.
it out. I figured it out.
Uh,
I think I did it. Holy shit, that was
okay, that is feedback form link is dropped. So Jen, if you put your mouse all the way at the top of the screen, it should say history. And then if you go down to the recently closed section, it's not in your 2 tabs. Oh, that's not fun. That's where you would hit restore all tabs and it
There
would
it
bring
is.
them back. But it looks like those are only 2 of them.
Yeah.
The other thing, I don't know.
I thought they stayed on there when you pinned them.
Oh, you talking about the bookmarks bar?
You like I had them all pinned. Like you right click a tab and pin it.
Are you signed in? Do you have like multiple Google accounts that you're signed into?
No, just the one on here.
Yeah,
Oh my
I
God,
don't.
20 tabs.
I haven't used the pin feature, so I'm not sure how that works.
If she's talking about the bookmarks bar, if you go over to the 3 dots.
No, it's not the bookmarks. It's
Yeah, it's like when you have a tab up like this, you can just right click it and pin or unpin it, and it sticks it to the top. And even if you close it, it stays up there.
Oh wow, I didn't know that did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just gonna remote control to show the pin option. Chrome restore pin tabs. Oh, apparently you have to you go to the Chrome settings and on startup.
I just clicked that. It was open in the new tab page.
I think that's why. Then it says, if you close this browser window with your tabs still pinned, the tabs will remain pinned. Yeah, so they'll say pin next time, but because you didn't have that set, they don't stay pinned.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I think, but you might want to confirm that by like,
Yeah, I'm
you
gonna
have
keep
Canvas
Googling it.
pinned, quit Chrome, reopen it, and just make sure it stays there.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
Just go over through the code. Can you just oh, it's okay. I'll share mine.
Oh, or I can share mine, whatever's easier.
No, that's okay, because I gotta use my mouse pointer too. Just to, yeah. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, so I'm just gonna like kind of sort of try to narrate what happened, and please
Sure.
let me. All right, so here we created a button, and we added the button that on clicking it, add item event is this function that you're gonna carry out. Here the add item event is there's this new variable called input box that fetches get fetches the element by its ID, the input element by its ID, and this is the ID.
Mhm.
Console logs its value into the console, not to the HTML.
Correct.
Right. And for depositing it back to HTML, what we do is we have another variable, list div, which is also getting going into the document and grabbing list items, which is this div,
Mhm.
fetching it into the script, right? Now I don't understand like what happens here. It's like is it
So think about it as whatever is on the right side of the equal is what gets put into the left side of the equal.
Gotcha. So input box's value, which is console logged here, which we provide, is put into list div.innerHTML.
Yeah. So the way that I think about it is that this is the step of going into the HTML. It then puts it in the JavaScript here. And that same thing happens here. It's going into the HTML document here and storing it into input box. Same with list div. So now whenever we use input box, it's referencing this JavaScript variable that we just created there. The same goes for this list div. It knows that that is linked to this variable that we created right there. Now, there happens to be in the document object model certain properties, right, that that the HTML understands with the JavaScript working together. So it is agreed upon that when JavaScript says inner HTML, it knows to put that whatever is getting put in there in between the opening and closing div tag. The same goes with this right side. It's like input box. What do you want of the input box? I want a specific DOM property called value. And it's going value. Oh, value is whatever got typed in to the input right up here.
Right.
So what you're doing is you're basically saying, hey, go get all of this from the input box that we pulled out from the document, take that whole value and go put it in not only the list div, but inside the HTML of that list div. So essentially what we're doing is we're taking the value of this input and dropping it into the div right here. But it takes all 3 lines of JavaScript in order to pull that off.
Gotcha. So in case we had wanted a bulleted list like the ULLI element, we would have added a ULLI element here and then added like li dot.
Yep. That's what we're going to do tomorrow. Yes.
Okay. Understood. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. But yes, you're totally right on those next steps. I just saving it for class. So we build up to that. Goggin, what's up?
So I did try to figure this out, but how you put in the second lane? I'm just trying, some curious person, so I have to get this done. If not, it will bother me. So this is what I did. Can you see my code?
Yeah, here I'll give you both the answer because I know you're both. Actually, everyone who's probably still on is curious about it. So what you do is you can turn this into a UL. And then down here, you say you're going to take the list div's inner HTML, flip this, and say, hey, when we add the inner HTML, we're also going to add a list item. And inside that list item is going to be the input box dot value.
Oh, okay.
And now I'm getting really fancy because I'm using a template literal, which we also have not covered. And I probably should have stopped the recording before I confuse people, but we can add item and say to an add item and it works.
That's what I was. I mean, I got it in line, but I didn't know how to put it like in bullet points or something. Oh, that was cool. That's cool. I love it.
You can. This is really fancy. This is the equivalent of basically saying
And you use the backticks also.
The backticks for the template literal. Yeah, you can't use the $ curly brace syntax unless you have it in backticks.
Nice.
And we'll learn about those later. But I'm going to do string concatenation tomorrow because that's an easier concept to wrap your head around.
I understand this one much better.
So like you put those li elements in the script.js in the codes, like you can replace them with anything. For example, for hypothetical reasons, say an input element, and every time you hit enter, it's going to create a new input element in the HTML.
Yeah, you could even do both. You could say add the li and then add like an input. If I do it as a proper string. And then when you add an item, it's going to make that input below every one of them, which could be good for like if I wanted to put in notes for each one of the items, I could do an interface like that. So yes, anything that you put in here is going to be interpreted as HTML, and the browser is going to render that out for you.
Perfect.
Nice. I'm going to keep this. That's a good one. Splash, did you read my message?
You send me a message.
I was
Yes,
gonna ask if anybody's free tomorrow and we can like hang out. And
I'm actually working tomorrow.
shit, I'm gonna take off tomorrow.
I might be free, but I do have a quick question. So in line 9.
Yep.
Okay, so I get the list div dot inner HTML, which is like I get how we set that up. But what? Okay, so I'm confused about like the concatenation.
That's so all we're doing is we're saying take whatever's currently in the inner HTML and add on a new li tag. And between the li tag is going to be the value of the input box. Then we're going to close out that li tag. So we're basically saying, hey, go take whatever's currently in the HTML, add on a new list item with the text box value, close out that list item, and take all of that and put that into the inner HTML of the list div.
Okay, and then it's just automatically saving it because like that's how we
Because
set
inner HTML gets updated every single time.
Oh, and it doesn't delete. Okay, that makes
Correct.
sense.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
No problem. Last call for questions. All right. Have a good night, everyone. I'll see you guys.